They laughed at her shaking hands and called her weak. Yet none of them knew that the quiet nurse standing near the wall had already carried dying men in her arms and chosen who lived and who did not, and that before this night ended, a Navy helicopter would land outside demanding her by a name she buried years ago, a name that would turn every cruel word spoken against her into shame. Let me take you back to where it all began. She stood near the nurse's desk with her shoulders pulled in, holding a thin blue folder tight against her chest as if it could keep her steady, while voices moved around her like she was not there, and although she heard every word, she pretended she did not, because pretending had kept her alive before. Her name was June Whitlow, and she had been at the hospital only a few weeks, long enough for people to notice that she spoke softly, avoided eyes, and never joined in, and long enough for them to decide she was fragile. A nurse leaned toward another and said quietly, "She looks like she might cry any second." And the other smiled and said, "Give it time, she won't last." And June heard them because she always heard things meant to cut. She did not respond. She never did. Instead, she checked her watch and stepped aside when Dr. Ryland Voss walked past her without slowing down, his shoulder brushing hers like she was furniture. And he said her name the way people say a problem, "Whitlow," then added, "Try not to mess up tonight," and walked on. She swallowed and nodded because nodding was easier than explaining, and explaining was dangerous when your past could still find you. She had learned that long ago. A patient down the hall called out for water, and June went to him because she always went when someone asked, and she spoke gently while lifting the cup, careful not to let her hands show how they trembled when she was tired or cornered or reminded. The man thanked her, and she smiled a small smile that did not quite reach her eyes, because kindness still surprised her. Hours passed like this, small moments stacked together, quiet work, unkind looks, whispered jokes, and then the shift turned sharp without warning. A man was rushed and holding his chest, breathing fast, eyes wide, and everyone moved at once, voices rising, machines flashing numbers, and Dr. Voss took charge, calm and sure, calling out steps while June stood where she was told, watching, listening, noticing what others did not because noticing had once meant survival. She heard something wrong in the man's breathing, felt it in her bones, and although fear pressed against her ribs, she spoke, because she had learned that silence could kill. "Doctor," she said, soft but clear, "his breathing is not right on the left side." Dr. Voss did not look at her. He said, "Stand back," and waved her away like smoke. The man's face changed. His breath caught. The numbers dropped. June did not wait again. She moved because moving had once saved lives when there was no time to ask. Her hands were steady now, steady in a way that surprised even her, and when the pressure released and the man gasped and then settled, the room froze, and for one long moment no one spoke. Dr. Voss turned toward her slowly, his face tight, and he did not thank her. He said, "You overstepped," and when she tried to speak, he cut her off and said, "You embarrassed me in front of my team." And then lower, so others would not hear, "People like you are dangerous." The words hit deeper than he knew, because once, a long time ago, she had believed them too. Later, she sat outside on the steps with her arms wrapped around herself, trying to breathe past the weight in her chest, while an old golden retriever pressed close to her leg, his body warm, solid, real, reminding her that she was still here, and she whispered, "I can't keep doing this." Not sure if she meant the job or the pretending or the living as half a person. She did not hear the helicopter at first. No one did. But when it came down near the building and men in uniform moved fast toward the doors, everything changed. And when one of them stepped inside and asked, calm and firm, "Where is Valkyrie?" June stood up without meaning to, her heart dropping hard, because that name had followed her across oceans and years, and she had never expected it to find her here. The room didn't speak. No one moved. The soldiers stood still just inside the glass doors, eyes scanning. But one of them, the one in front, stared only at her. His voice didn't rise. He just said it again. "We're here for Valkyrie." The nurses looked around, confused. One of them laughed awkwardly. "That a code name or something?" The man didn't blink. "It's not a joke." His hand rested on a black folder held close to his chest. He didn't hold a weapon. He didn't need to. June stayed frozen by the stairs. Her legs felt weak. She thought about running but didn't. The dog beside her, Whisk, had risen slowly, as if he knew something was shifting in the air. He stood between her and the doorway now, his old eyes on the men. The soldier stepped forward. "June Whitlow?" She didn't answer. She didn't nod. But something in her face must have answered for her. The man's voice dropped. "You're Valkyrie. You served 6 tours. You saved my life in Helmand. You think I don't remember?" One of the nurses gasped softly. The front desk nurse shook her head like she was hearing a lie. Dr. Voss appeared from the side hallway, still holding his tablet, and said loudly, "What the hell is going on?" The soldier turned. "Dr. Voss." "Yes." "Good. Step aside." Voss scoffed. "Excuse me? This is a hospital. You don't get to storm in and... We're not here for your permission." He stepped past him and faced June. "We need you now. One of ours has a live device in his neck. No one will touch it." June's throat tightened. "I'm not that person anymore. That person is the only one who can save him." Behind her, Whisk let out a quiet sound. Not a growl. Not a bark. Just a low, questioning noise. She looked down at him. His head tilted slightly like he was asking her if it was time. If she still remembered how. Slowly, June stepped forward. The hallway was still. Nurses watched. Voss muttered under his breath and followed. But no one spoke to him. The hospital doors opened wider. Outside, the wind whipped louder now. The blades of the helicopter hadn't fully stopped. The vehicle waited on the edge of the pad like something out of a memory she never wanted back. "He's stable for now," the soldier beside her said. "But the clock's ticking. You're the only one who's done this before." She nodded once. Not because she felt brave, but because saying no would haunt her longer than the risk. "What's his name?" she asked. "Tex," he said. "You've met him. Back in 2013. Kandahar. He took a round through the hip and you pulled him through 3 miles of open field." The memory hit her before she could stop it. The mud. The blood. His voice yelling jokes through the pain. "Tell Valkyrie I owe her beers for life." "I remember," she said, her voice quiet. "Is he still loud?" "Not tonight. He's fading." The ER doors opened and June stepped inside. Her scrubs were still the same. Her badge still said nurse. But every step she took felt heavier. Not in a bad way. Just real. The kind of weight that only comes when the past finally stands in front of you. Inside Trauma Bay 1, 3 doctors stood near the bed looking helpless. One of them held a report in his hand, shaking his head. "Ceramic shard," he said. "Not showing up on regular scans. Something experimental. They're calling it a microfrag. If it shifts, it cuts an artery. If we use the wrong tool, it heats up. They don't know what it'll do." The man on the bed was pale. His chest barely moved. Lines and tubes ran everywhere. His eyes opened just a crack, and June saw him blink. "Tex?" she whispered. His lips moved, dry and faint. "You came. I'm here. Knew you would." Then his eyes shut again. A nurse in the corner stared at June like she was seeing someone else. Like the woman who brought ice chips and wiped down beds was not the same person standing in front of the surgical tray now, asking for non-metal tools and sterile gauze. Dr. Voss stepped into the room, crossed his arms, and said, "She's not a surgeon. This is insane." The soldier turned. "She was a combat medic who operated under mortar fire. You want her credentials? Look at her scars." June didn't answer. She was already at the tray, sorting through what she needed, hands moving fast, clean, with purpose. The other doctors stepped back. No one said another word. Then someone asked, "How long has she been here?" The nurse near the monitors said, "Just under 3 months." "And none of you knew?" Silence. June did not answer the nurse's question. She didn't need to. Her hands moved like they used to, with quiet control. She laid the tools out carefully, avoiding anything metal. She asked for a headlamp. The assistant moved slowly, almost unsure, but obeyed. Dr. Voss stood near the back wall, jaw tight, arms still crossed, like he was waiting for her to fail. She didn't look at him. She looked only at Texas. His face was still, his breathing shallow, but he was alive. For now. She leaned closer and whispered near his ear. "You still owe me those beers." His lips twitched faintly. Just a hint. It was enough. She turned to the table. "I'll need 2 people only. Quiet. Focused. And no one touches him but me." The soldier nodded and pointed to 2 medics from his team. "You have them." She pointed. "I want someone monitoring his BP every second. No guesses. Real numbers." "Done. Keep a cooling pack ready. If the device heats up, I'll need to slow it down fast." "Ready. Do not interrupt unless I ask a direct question." "Understood." Then she took a breath and started. The room went quiet. Only her voice gave direction now. Her hands moved in slow, practiced steps. She used a wooden clamp to shift a vein aside, cotton pads to control the blood, a plastic retractor to hold the tissue open. Nothing sharp, nothing reactive. Every motion counted. Every pause had a reason. No one in the room had ever seen someone work like this. Not in a hospital. Not with that calm, that focus. The pressure in the room was heavy. But June didn't flinch. She spoke softly as she worked. Not to explain, just to stay steady. "They called me Valkyrie," she said, not looking up. It wasn't a compliment. It was because I showed up after the bombs, after the screaming, when people didn't always make it. The young medic next to her swallowed. She didn't notice. "We didn't use tables like this," she continued. "We used the backs of trucks. Cold dirt. Our hands." She gently shifted a clamp. Sometimes a soldier would ask, "Will I make it?" And you couldn't answer because you didn't know. Her voice didn't shake, but something behind it did. Whisk sat by the door, still and alert, watching only her. The monitor beeped once, then again. Too fast. "His BP is rising," one medic said. She didn't panic. "Cool the neck. Gently." They did. The beeping slowed. She looked deeper into the wound and saw it. A small, dark object, wedge-shaped, just beneath the artery. No label, no metal shine, just a threat waiting to wake up. "Found it," she said. No one breathed. The soldier near the door took 1 step forward, then froze. "Don't move," she said. "Not yet." She reached for the custom clamp. No metal, only wood and ceramic. Her fingers didn't shake now. She placed the clamp around the object, felt it tighten slightly. The monitor beeped again. She froze. A faint whine came from the wound. Not a beep, a sound. The kind that says don't move another inch. "It's armed," she whispered. Everyone froze. Even Whisk tilted his head. The soldier said nothing. June closed her eyes for a second, then opened them. "Turn the fan off." No air. No vibration. They did. She pressed the cooling pack gently around the area. Waited. The sound faded slightly. She breathed. "I'm going to pull it," she said. 1 motion. Then I move back and hand it off. "Where should we take it?" the soldier asked. "Outside. Far end of the lot. Use the disposal case." "We've got it." She tightened her grip. The room stayed still. "On my mark," she said. 3, 2. She pulled. The object slid free. She stepped back fast. Handed it off without looking. The soldier ran. "Close him," she said. Her voice flat, controlled. "Now." They moved. Tex coughed once. His chest rose slow, then again. He was breathing. She pressed both hands on the table and leaned forward, her eyes still on him. He was alive. He was safe. Then, a low, distant boom outside. Not loud, but enough to shake the glass. The lights flickered. No one spoke. The object had exploded. If it had gone off inside. June didn't finish the thought. She sat down on the small metal stool near the wall and rested her hands on her knees. Her scrubs were soaked through at the chest, her forehead damp, her fingers red from the work. Whisk padded over and laid his head in her lap. She didn't speak. Not for a long time. The soldier came back in. His voice was calm. "It's done. Contained. No injuries. She nodded once. He added quietly, "You saved him." She didn't nod again, but her hands finally began to shake. The room slowly filled with voices again. Whispered ones. Uncertain ones. People speaking like they were afraid to be too loud around her now. One nurse stepped back and murmured, "She did it?" And another whispered, "She's not just a nurse, is she?" Dr. Voss didn't speak. He stood still against the back wall, jaw locked, like the world had turned upside down and no one told him why. June stood slowly from the stool. Her legs were stiff. Her chest felt tight, not from pain, just from holding everything in for too long. The soldier approached and handed her a folded patch. She looked down at it. It was the old unit insignia. Black thread. 2 wings crossed over a broken line. She hadn't seen it in years. "We kept it for you," he said. "Thought maybe you'd want it back." She stared at it for a moment, then closed her fingers around it without a word. Outside the trauma bay, the hospital hallway was quiet. People stepped aside when she walked past. Not afraid, just unsure. They didn't know who she really was. They were trying to understand. Whisk padded beside her, his head just under her hand. She didn't speak to him. He didn't need words. He'd been with her when no one else had stayed. The hospital director stood near the admin desk. He had just been called in. He looked confused, then concerned, then deeply serious as June walked up to him. He gestured toward the office. "Can we talk inside?" She nodded. Inside, the director sat down behind his desk. June stayed standing. "I've been briefed," he said. "We were told you served. But what you just did..." He shook his head. "It wasn't just brave. It was surgical. It was beyond anything I've seen here." June waited. "Why didn't you say anything when you joined us?" She looked down at her hands. They were still again. But she remembered when they weren't. "Because I was trying to forget," she said. "And because every time I said who I was, it changed how people saw me. I just wanted to be useful." Quietly, the director nodded slowly. "Well, it's not quiet anymore." He leaned forward. "They want to take you back. I've already received a message from the Department of Defense. They said your unit has requested you directly. They want you overseas. Again." June didn't speak. "But," he added, "we'd like to offer something else." She lifted her eyes. "We want you here, in a new role, training, emergency readiness, combat trauma education, not just for nurses, for everyone. Full program. Your lead." He waited. "You'll have full say in how it's run." "I don't want to go back to war," she said. "We're not asking you to," he replied. "We're asking you to help us make sure fewer people die." She looked toward the glass door. Whisk sat just outside it, watching her. She didn't answer yet. She just stood there, the patch still in her hand, and remembered what it had felt like to be needed again. Not for war, not for killing, but for saving someone, for teaching others how to do it right. She closed her hand around the patch. Then she said quietly, "I'll stay, but on my terms." "Done," he said. Later that evening, after everything was cleaned, after the reports were filed, after techs had been moved into recovery, June stood outside with Whisk near the edge of the landing pad. The wind had picked up again. The last of the helicopters was lifting off. She watched it for a moment, then looked away. She reached down and touched Whisk's head gently. "You stayed," she said. He leaned into her leg. A voice called from behind. She turned. It was a nurse from earlier, the one who had whispered about her that morning. She looked nervous now, small. She hesitated, then stepped closer. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, for what I said earlier. I didn't know." June didn't smile, but she nodded once. "Most people don't." The nurse looked down, then added, "That man, Texas, will he make it?" "He will now." "And you? Are you really Valkyrie?" June looked past her, toward the lights inside the building. Then she said softly, "Not anymore. I'm just June now." The nurse started to say something else, but a voice called from the front desk. Someone asking for help. The nurse nodded, turned, and walked quickly back inside. June stayed a moment longer. Then her phone buzzed. A new message. She opened it slowly. It was from a number she didn't recognize. The text read, "Another one of ours needs you. He won't talk to anyone but Valkyrie. Please." She didn't reply. Not yet. But she didn't delete it either. Behind her, Whisk stood and waited. She turned back toward the building and walked inside. The hospital felt different now. Not louder, just more aware. People still walked the halls, still tapped at screens and answered phones, but the way they moved had changed. As if something sacred had just passed through, and they didn't want to disturb it. June Whitlow didn't notice most of it. Not directly, but she felt it in how they looked at her now. Not mocking, not whispering, just watching with something like curiosity. Or guilt. Or maybe just awe. She didn't want any of it. She sat on the bench outside the staff entrance with Whisk beside her. He had his head resting on her foot like always. It had been an hour since the last surgery. An hour since she'd said no to the Navy, yes to the hospital, and still hadn't replied to the message that now sat quietly in her phone. "Another one of ours needs you." She stared at the words again. "He won't talk to anyone but Valkyrie. Please." The message was from a name she didn't recognize, Lieutenant Holland. But the tone was familiar. Someone reaching for help in the dark. She had been on both ends of that before. Still, she didn't respond. Inside, someone opened the side door. It was the hospital director. He saw her and waited, then slowly stepped out. "I just got the second call," he said. "Sounds urgent." She looked up. "You read it." They sent it to the main line too. Said the patient refuses all other care. "Why?" Said he watched a video of what you did. Said he knew your name before he heard it. "What's his injury?" "Shrapnel near the spine. Possible internal bleeding. Refusing transport." She was quiet. "And he's military?" "Retired. Civilian now. But he served under your unit for a year." Said he used to carry your packs. She let out a slow breath. "Where is he?" "A rehab center outside of town. About 30 minutes away." "You want me to go?" "I think you already know if you will or not." She stood up. Whisk followed. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. The drive was quiet. She sat in the back of a black hospital vehicle. Whisk lay at her feet, calm. The driver didn't ask questions. She was grateful for that. When they arrived, a nurse met them at the gate. She looked young, nervous, and a little overwhelmed. "We weren't sure if you'd come," she said. "He stopped talking 6 days ago. Won't eat. Just repeats your name." June nodded. "Can I go in alone?" "Yes. Room 12. He's waiting." The hallway was narrow. Old tile. The kind of place meant for slow healing and hard memories. June walked quietly, the soles of her shoes soft on the floor. When she reached the room, she paused, then knocked once and opened the door. He was sitting in the chair by the window, staring outside. His face was thin, his eyes sunken. But when he turned and saw her, something in his shoulders dropped, like a weight he'd carried too long had just slid to the floor. "Valkyrie," he whispered. She didn't answer right away. She stepped in and closed the door behind her. Whisk sat just inside, his eyes on the man. "You look like hell," she said. The man smiled faintly. "You should see the other guy." She pulled a chair up beside him. "What happened?" "Old injury. Got worse. They want to open me up." I said no. "Why?" "Because the last time I went under, I woke up with less than I started with." She didn't reply. He looked at her. "You remember me?" She studied his face, then nodded slowly. "You were the quiet one. Always had my back during equipment checks." He smiled. "That's me." They sat in silence for a few seconds. "I'm tired, Valkyrie," he said. "Real tired." "I know. I didn't call you to fix me. I just wanted to say goodbye to someone who'd understand." She looked at him carefully, then said, "You're not dying. Feels like it. You've felt worse." He didn't argue. She leaned forward. "Let them help you, or let me help you. But don't sit here waiting for the end. You didn't survive the sand, the noise, the blood, just to waste away in a chair. His eyes filled just a little. I lost too many, he said. And the ones I didn't lose, they don't call anymore. You called, she said. That counts. I called because I was afraid. That counts more. They sat in silence again. Then he said, Why'd you stop? After the war. Why'd you hide who you were? She thought about it, then answered truthfully. Because it hurt to remember. He nodded. Yeah. Then he looked down at Whisk. He's still with you? Every day. Good dog. She stood. You're not alone. Not today. He looked up. Will you come back? She nodded. If you let the doctors do their job. He gave a small smile. Deal. She turned and walked out of the room. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. Another message. Request for trauma training. 2 weeks. Army base. Interested? She stared at it for a long time. Then she opened the message and typed one word. Yes. 2 weeks later, she stood at the edge of a small military base field in Nevada. It was early morning, but the sun was already strong. A group of young medics stood in a half-circle in front of her. Some of them were just kids, barely older than she was when she started. They looked unsure, curious, some nervous. They didn't know who she was yet. Not really. She didn't wear a uniform anymore. Just a simple shirt, scrubs pants, hair tied back. Whisk sat at her side. He wore no vest, but his presence said everything. June scanned the group. I'm June Whitlow, she said. You can call me June. Some of you might have heard another name. Valkyrie. The group stirred slightly. I didn't choose that name. It was given to me, in the middle of chaos, because I kept showing up. After the blast, after the blood, after the noise. She paused. Today, I'm not here to talk about war. I'm here to teach you how not to freeze when it counts. How to move even when you're shaking. How to save someone with nothing but your hands and a calm voice. She walked to the center of the field. I'm not going to make you fearless. That's not real. But I will make you prepared. A hand rose. A young woman with sharp eyes. Is it true you pulled a live explosive out of someone's neck? June nodded once. Yes. Were you scared? June looked down at Whisk, then looked back up. I was terrified, but fear is part of it. You just have to move anyway. They nodded. The day began. She showed them field techniques, how to improvise tools, how to stay calm. She told them stories, not the ones in the news, the real ones, about mistakes, about loss, about second chances. They listened, every word. At lunch, one of them sat beside her quietly, a young man with a scar across his forearm. Can I ask something personal? He said. She nodded. How do you come back after all that? After seeing what you saw? She looked at him. I didn't, she said. Not right away. I stayed gone for years. I hid in plain sight. I thought if I didn't talk about it, it would go away. But pain doesn't leave just because you don't speak it. He nodded. What helped? He asked. She reached down and stroked Whisk's head. This old guy, she said. And people who stopped trying to fix me and just stood beside me instead. At the end of the day, as the sun began to fall, the students gathered around her. Same time tomorrow? One asked. Yes, she said. And bring questions. The hard ones. They laughed lightly. The mood had shifted. They weren't afraid anymore. As they walked away, one student turned and said, Thank you, ma'am. June smiled softly. You're welcome. But call me June. She watched them disappear into the barracks, then sat in the grass beside Whisk. The field was quiet now. Just wind. Light. Breath. She pulled the patch from her pocket, the black one with the wings. She didn't put it on. But she didn't throw it away. She just held it in her palm and let it stay there. 1 month later, back at the hospital, June returned to a room filled with new trauma nurses. The hospital had started a joint military training program, one she would now lead. Dr. Voss stood at the back, silent, listening. He didn't interrupt. He just nodded slightly when she walked in. Things were different now. After the class, one of the new nurses asked, What made you say yes to teaching? June thought for a second, then said, because if I could go back and speak to the version of myself who thought she had nothing left, I'd want her to know that her story wasn't over. Not even close. Later that night, June walked the long hallway alone. Same hallway where the jokes had once been whispered. Same floor where hands had shaken. Now quiet. Now steady. She passed the old trauma bay. The door was closed. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. Whisk followed beside her, old legs still strong. She stopped at the window and looked outside. Same city. Same sky. But something was different. Her. She turned back down the hall, her steps slow, but sure. She didn't carry the name Valkyrie anymore. But she didn't hide from it either. She was June Whitlow, veteran combat medic, nurse, teacher, survivor, and finally home. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, I promise you will surely love the next one. This is crazier and more thrilling as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.